بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. We are discussing now the masla of, we finished the times of salah, the main times, etc. Now we're going to be discussing, in the Hanafi madhab, there's a third, rather a sixth salah that is necessary, and that is the witr salah. It's slightly lower than a faraz, slightly, but it is also compulsory. So it's compulsory in the sense that you have to do it, right? So if you don't read your salah, there's qadha for it. Né? And like if a person passes away and he made wasiyat, then also you have to pay for the witr salah. So there's something, a concept we'll discuss later on, which we say, amalan, it is necessary. You have to do it. It's just as good as living out a farz. But the only difference is that the proof is not as strong, but the proof does suggest that you have to do it. So that is wajib. Like how the beard in the Hanafi madhab, it's wajib to grow the beard. If you cut the beard, you will be sinful. Right? It is wajib to do it. Right? Yes, the proof that suggests you must do it is not so strong, but the proof itself suggests you must do it. Understood that? So if you deny a faraz, you don't accept a faraz, you come out of the fold of Islam. But if you deny a wajib, you don't come out of the fold of Islam. So with regards to the practice, both are necessary, right? It's just that with regards to aqidah, if you deny it, you don't come out of the fold of Islam. But anyway, so the next salah we're going to start is the witr salah. Now we're going to discuss what is the time of witr. Interesting, very interesting here. See, Hazrat Imam Shafi says, Sahibain says that witr time comes in after you read your Isha, right? So until you never read your Isha, witr time hasn't entered. So it's you look at each individual. Once he reads his Isha namaz, now he can read his witr. So technically speaking, according to Hazrat Imam Sahibain, if a person read his witr first and then he read his Isha namaz, his witr is not done, right? And even if a person forgot, he never read Isha namaz, right? Say for example, just simple example, you used to reading your witr by the masjid, right? And then you go home and later on before you sleep, you read your witr. But today you are late, you didn't go to the masjid and you never read your Isha namaz, right? So later on, I'm reading my witr namaz, so you read your witr namaz. So according to Sahibain, your witr is not done. Because when does witr time come in? After you read your Isha, right? Are you with me? Now, this is very interesting. Now, if you look at Hazrat Imam Hanifa, he says, look, the moment Isha time comes in, listen nicely, it's a very fine difference. The moment Isha time comes in, right, witr time also comes in. So does this mean now you can read your witr before your Isha namaz? No. Imam Hanifa says, even though witr time come in with the Isha time, but tartib is wajib. So technically speaking, the moment Isha time come in, the moment the shafaq disappears, that is already witr time. But it is wajib to make the first, right? So now, till this point, it seems like there's no difference between the madhab of Imam bin Sahibain and Imam Hanifa. It seems the same. But this is where the difference come in. See, if a person intentionally reads his witr before his Isha, according to both Sahibain and Imam Sahib, is not done, right? Now look at this scenario, like I gave you the scenario earlier. A person, he forgot he never read his Isha. Like I gave you a surah. You say, how can a person forget he never read Isha? I told you maybe you normally stop by the masjid, you read your Isha, you go home, you have supper, etc. Right? So now you went home, and now, as per your habit, you read your Isha namaz, right? So there, according to Sahibain, well, the witr it won't be done. Why? Because for that individual, witr time never enter. But according to Imam Abu Hanifa, will his witr be done? Yes, his witr will be done. Why? Because tartib is wajib, right? So because he says the time entered already, the witr time entered already, but tartib is wajib. But when something is, when you leave out a wajib, unintentionally, then it falls away. So that's the first scenario where you see the samaratul ikhtilaf, the fruit of the difference. I'll give you another scenario. A person read his Isha namaz, right? A person read his Isha namaz, and then he went to toilet, right? And he relieved himself, he made a fresh wuzu, and then he read his witr namaz, right? So follow nicely, he read his Isha namaz, he broke his wuzu, he made a fresh wuzu, and he read his witr. But then he realized now, hey, I didn't have wudu for Isha. My Isha is not done. My Isha is not done. His witr, what's the position of his witr? According to Sahibain, his witr is not done because he never read Isha. He never read Isha. And if he never read Isha, witr time never enter. But according to Imam Hanifa, his witr is done. Why is his witr done? Because remember, you witr doesn't have to enter with the entry of Isha namaz, right? It sorry, doesn't have to doesn't enter with the performing of the shanamas. Technically, witr time enters with the entry of the isha time, right? So then you ask me now, okay, but you said tartib is wajib. We say yes, tartib is wajib, but here he forgot, he didn't have wuzu, so there was nisyan. So when there's khata and nisyan, the wajib falls away. You understood that? So according to Imam Hanifa, you cannot intentionally read your witr if you know you haven't read your isha, because tartib is wajib. And if something is wajib and you done it, left it out, you have to redo it. Right? Are you with me? But when something is wajib and you leave it out unintentionally, then you are maaf. And I gave you these two scenarios where you left isha out unintentionally. One is you forgot, you never read it. Like I told you, you normally read a certain time and you just took it for granted. You read it, and I gave you another scenario, khata, where you thought your isha is done, and then after you made a fresh wudu. So technically speaking, your witr is done because witr was done in the proper time. It was the entry time of isha. And then if you ask me, what about, you're gonna ask me now, what about the tartib? I'll tell you, tartib is wajib, but tartib drops off. Why it drops off? Because of khata and nisyan. Now read the ibarat. This inshallah ibarat will fit in nicely now. لقوله عليه الصلاة والسلام في الوتر وصلوها ما بين العشاء إلى طلوع الفجر. قال رضي الله عنه هذا عندهما عند أبي حنيفة رحمه الله وقته وقت العشاء إلا أنه لا يقدم عليه عند التذكر. I got tazkiri, what? Okay, that also makes sense. So now, inshallah, if you understood what I told you, I hope the online people understood this. Inshallah. وأول وقت الوتر بعد العشاء. The first time of witr بعد العشاء is after the isha namaz, right? وآخر ما لم يطلع الفجر, and the last is as long as the dawn doesn't break, right? لقوله عليه السلام, because of the statement of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, صلوها ما بين العشاء إلى طلوع الفجر, read it, what is between the isha to the rising of the dawn. قال هذا عندهما. So this is Sahibain's opinion, that isha time, you must have read your isha. Once you read isha, then the time enters, right? So even if you've mistakenly read your witr and your isha is not done, or you forgot whatever I told you, still a coin is not done because the time never entered, the isha was not performed. But Imam Hanifa says, وَعِنْدَ أَبِي حَنِيفَةَ وَقْتُهُ وَقْتُ الْإِشَاءِ. So Imam Hanifa is saying, look here, the time of witr is the time of isha. There's no different times. And here in the Shara, they mention something also like, if you got several qadhas in one time, then you got several qadhas, you can read them all in one time, no problem, right? So, وَإِنْدَ أَبِي حَنِيفَةَ وَقْتُهُ وَقْتَ الْإِشَاءِ. So, we say the time of it is the time of isha. The time of it is the time of isha. Then I told you, then you're going to ask the question, yeah, but if it's the time of isha, it means the person decide to read his witr first. Yeah, and like, maybe sometimes this verse is also relevant. Many times people maybe in Ramadan, the men folk, whatever, they come late, they miss the isha namaz, right? They miss the isha namaz. Then they don't know they have to read the isha first. Then maybe they join the Tarawih namaz. Also, the Tarawih is also problematic because Tarawih comes after Isha, and then they read witr namaz. Then they think they're going to read the Isha afterwards. So that witr is not valid, right? So the time enters with the Isha time, but إلا أنه لا يقدم عليه. So see, follow nicely. you cannot bring the Isha before the witr. It's not right. Right? In that tadhakkuri li tartibi, when you remember that look here, my Isha is not done. But if for some reason or other you forgot your Isha is not done, or you done your Isha without wudu, and then that means when you were reading the witr, in your mind, your Isha is done already. Right? So when that's why I say it cannot be brought in for yani witr cannot be brought before Isha in that tadhakkuri li tartibi, when you are remembering the tartib. But when you forgot, then it drops off, the wajib drops off at the time of forgetting. And if you done it intentionally, according to the Imam Abu Hanifa, you intentionally, you know you never do your Isha, and then you read your witr first, what will happen? You will have to repeat it. Technique, you say it's done, but it's not done in a complete manner. You left out the wajib, you left out the wajib. So because when you leave out the wajib, you have to repeat it, is wajibul i'ada. Remember that we done. In fact, we're gonna do more of that when we come to the chapter of sajda sahu. When you leave out a wajib unintentionally, then you can make a sajda sahu. But when you leave out a wajib intentionally, then you have to repeat it. Nah? It's wajib to repeat it. Same like in the arkan of salah, if you left out a wajib of the salat, inshallah, this will come in a lot of detail. So if you wait for it, inshallah, if you leave out a wajib intentionally in your salah, it is wajib to repeat it. If you leave out the wajib unintentionally, you can compensate with the sajda sahun. Right. So I hope that is clear. It was a bit technical. If anybody never understand it, inshallah, you can tell me. I can explain it again. So that was the time of witr. Now we're going to start. Remember, I told you one is the permissible times, and then one is the better times to do it, right? So with regards to Fajr, we discussed this already. We say, according to Hanafi madhab, it's better to do it when it's light and bright. And the ulama explain also, they say, see, you shouldn't also leave it till the last minute. Because many a times we make our salah, and after our salah, we discover we forgot we don't have wudu, or we make a mistake in the salah, then we have to repeat it. So hypothetically say the sun rises 6 o'clock. So the brighter you make it, the better. But don't read it 5 to 6 or 6 minutes to 6. Because if you forgot, maybe you need a bath that night. Now you're going to run and make a bath. What's going to happen? So stop. So read it such a time before that if you realize there was a problem with your taharat, you will have time to go renew your taharat and come back, right? So do it when it's bright. Okay, read it, Bismillah. Okay, you got that heading. I don't have that heading. Let me see. They never separate. Okay, Faslu fi awqatil mustahabati, chapter with regards to the mustahab times of salah, right? Right. So remember, I tell you what isfar means. Isfar means to make bright, right? And the shurrah, they explain this. Make it bright, but not just before the time. Because also there's also danger if you just make it before the time. The moment the sun appears on the horizon, remember I told you this Masa is different to the Maghrib, the Masla. The Maghrib, they sell some latitude. If you started before the sun disappeared completely, and even if you finish after the sun rise, set already, no problem, it's still fine. But this Masa is more trickier that the moment the sun appear on the horizon and you're still reading the mass, you'll have to repeat it. So that's also one reason why we say don't leave it for the last minute. And the second reason is maybe after you read Salah, you discover there was a problem with your taharat. Maybe you found maybe there's like, the ladies who Q-tex or there's something, or you're working with glue and you read on a mask, hey, there's glue on my finger, I have to wash and read again, whatever. So at least you got that latitude to read it again, right? So say 10 to 15 minutes before sunrise, right? So wa yustahabul isfaru bil fajri, so isfar to make bright the fajr is mustahab preferred. Why? Liqawli alayhi salam, we have a clear hadith that asfiru fil fajri, make bright, make fajr when it's bright, فَإِنَّهُ أَعْظَمُ لِلْأَجْرِ, because it is greater in reward when it is bright, right? Then وقال الشافعي يستحب التعجيل في كل صلاة. And Imam Shafi says every salah without exception, that the moment you sure the time is in, read it. Right, carry on. Right. So what is our proof against him? First, we have hadith, we say asfiru, right? And what we're going to narrate also now, there's a lengthy hadith in which we're going to narrate also, that's another proof. Carry on. Yeah. So now we're going to now move on to the times of Zuhur. Zuhur, what is the best time to read? According to Hanafi madhab, والإبراد بالظهر when في الظهر في الصيف in the hot months ميتر is cooler, and I told you this after the Mishnah hour. Remember we discussed it. So in the summer months it is better to delay the Zuhr. والإبراد بالظهر في الصيف, so especially maybe the ladies by the house, it's easy for them to control their times. Allah, they can try to practice upon this also, right? So too. So, right. وَتَقْدِيمُهُ فِي الشِّتَاءِ, and then in winter to read it quickly the moment the time enters because it's cool, right? Right. لرواية أنس, is رواية of Anas رضي الله تعالى عنه. قال كان رسول الله إذا كان في الشتاء, the Nabi as Anas said that Nabi when he was in the month of winter, بكر بالظهر, would make ظهر early. وإذا كان في الصيف, and when it was a hot month, أبرد, you'd make it when it was cold. Carry on. Okay. See, in the Hanafi madhab, a lot of people are unaware of this masla. I told you I'm going to discuss this in detail with you with Mishkat Sharif afterwards. Once you read your Asr Salah, you're not allowed to read any Nafal namaz. And that's what I'm saying. Once you read your Asr, a lot of people, they send this question, they ask this question here, that we will making tawaf after Asr in the Haramain Sharifain. What should we do? Can we read our Nafal tawaf after that? We say no. There's no Nafal after Fajr. There's no Nafal after, there's no Nafal after Asr. Right? You have to read the two rakats after the sunset, right? So what he's saying is here, make the Asr the latest possible. Why? So that you do not cut off the opportunity of reading Nafal namaz. That's what I'm saying. But when you delay the Asr, do not delay to such an extent where the sun starts to change. Now, if you must just notice, let's say about 20 to 25 minutes before sunset, you see the sun starts turning reddish, etc. And here in the kitab you're going to do, that's when you can look straight into the sun without squinting. So delay the Asr Jamaat as much as possible, right? So that you can read a lot of Nafil, you have time to read Nafil, but do not delay it to that point in time where you can look directly at the sun. And that's what I'm saying. And there is a hadith you done in the hadith books in it, why you shouldn't delay it to when the etc. is because that's the time Shaitan, he stands in such a way that the sun uh, shines between his horns. And in previous days, there were people who used to worship the sun, so he makes himself happy as though the people are worshipping him, right? So see there, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَتَأْخِيرُ الْعَصْرِ, and to delay the Asr, مَا لَمْ تَتَغَيَّرِ الشَّمْسُ, both in summer and winter, as long as the sun does not change. And I told you what I explained what means change, where it becomes weak and you can look directly at it. This safety was shitai, in the hot months and the cold months. Why delay it? لما فيه من تكثير النوافل, because the longer you delay it, the more chances of you to read nafil namaz. Although you can read after you read your answer, you can read qadha namaz, but also not to the point where the sun changes, right? So why you delay it? لقراهتها بعد, because it's makruh at-tahrimi to read nafil namaz after asr. Now, when they say the sun change, what do you mean the sun change here? وَالْمُعْتَبَرُ تَغَيُّرُ الْقُرْصِ فِيهِ, and what is considered is the changing of the sun itself. Qursuf means the actual ball of the sun when it becomes weak, right? And what they mean تغير القرص, very explain. So explain it further. وَيَسِيرُ بِحَالٍ, and that the sun becomes in such a way, it comes to such a condition Yes, here's the question. Can you read Nafil Salat once Asr time sets in, but you as an individual haven't read your Asr? Yes, you can. It's how you read your 4 rakats before. Remember, you read your 4 rakats. So even Asr time came in, right? And you haven't read your Asr as yet, you can read. If you're in a masjid or if you're in a haram, you haven't read your Asr as yet, you can read enough nafil before as much as you want to. You can read qadha namaz. But yes, once you as an individual read your Asr, then it's no more, right? So you're explaining here, what does it mean that the sun changes? Yes, وهو يسير, it becomes in such a condition حال لا تحار فيه الأعين, that the eyes cannot look at it. You understood that? Because the eyes will not deviate. Let me just, yeah, the eyes will not, no, I don't think that the deviate is not, the eyes will not be inconvenienced by it. So it means you can look at it comfortably. So listen to that nicely. Once the sun reaches the condition where you can look at it without any inconvenience, then it's okay, yeah. So it means you can look directly at it. Then at that point in time, it becomes makruh. And then also it's makruh to read your come move right? Then it becomes makruh. And also another masla, that at that time also, if you haven't read the Asr of the day, then obviously you must read the Asr of the day because you haven't read your Asr. But you cannot make qadha, a previous qadha namaz. Why? Because that is what we say a deficient time. It's a makruh time. It's a time when shaitan is out and your qadha namaz became qadha in a complete way. So now you're reading it in an incomplete time. So just to recapitulate, so the Asr time you must read it just before this happens, which is about half an hour, 25 minutes before sunset, right? But if you haven't read the Asr of the day, you must still read it in that time because you haven't read it, right? And then once you read your Asr namaz, you can't read any nafils. But once you read your Asr namaz, you can make qadha namaz, but before the sun changes, which we told you here. I think nice way to run. La tuharu fil ayun. The eyes are not inconvenienced by it, right? Okay, then just short ibarat. I know time is almost ridiculous. ويستحب تعجيل المغرب. Once you certain the sun is set, like then it's better to hasten the maghrib. Don't hasten the maghrib to such an extent that you're reading it when the sun never set. Like you're 100% sure now the sun is set. Now read your maghrib immediately. Right. ويستحب تعجيل المغرب. Why? لأن تأخيرها مكروه. Because to delay it is makruh. Why? لما فيه من التشبه باليهود. Because the Yahud, they also do a nightly prayer, whatever, but they wait a little while after the sun set. Now we were down to, and I think even the Shias, the Shias, they also, I don't know if you know this, the Shias, they break their fast only when the stars come out. So they break about a half an hour or three-quarter an hour after us. So also maybe I'm not sure if they read the Maghrib at that time also. But anyway, it's better to the moment you're certain, read it. Now we're not saying read it so quick that you're going to read in the makruh time, right? وقال السلام لا يزال أمتي بخير. Nabi said in a hadith, my ummah will continue بخير to remain on goodness. ما أجلوا المغرب, as long as they hasten the Maghrib, right? وأخروا العشاء, and they delay the Isha a bit, be certain that the time is in. Okay, so the first part of that about the witr and etc. I had a bit of explanation. If anybody's not sure, they can ask us, inshallah. We will continue tomorrow, inshallah. Bas subhanallah, bihamdihi,